At 3 a.m., Lily's neighbor heard a loud bang, followed by an eerie silence. The next morning, as neighbors went about their usual routine, one of them noticed that the curtains in Lily's house were still drawn and the interior was dim. A sense of unease prompted them to call the police. When the authorities arrived at the scene, Lily's body was found lying on the kitchen floor, a gun lying beside her, its chamber empty. She was wearing her pajamas, with a pained expression on her face, as though she had been tormented in her final moments. Preliminary checks suggested that her cause of death appeared to be suicide, with a gunshot wound to her head, and the position of her body seemed consistent with that of a self-inflicted injury. However, a closer examination of the scene cast doubt on this initial assumption. There were no blood spatter marks, and the gun had no fingerprints from the victim. The angle of the gunshot was inconsistent with what would normally be seen in a suicide. Even more puzzling, small shards of broken glass were found on the kitchen floor, suggesting the possibility of external interference in the scene. The police immediately began their investigation, and a tense atmosphere descended upon the small town. Was Lily's death really a suicide, or had it been a murder? Everything was unclear, and the investigation was just beginning to peel back the layers of mystery. Click to subscribe so you don't miss the exciting continuation of the story. Lily had always been seen as a flawless police officer. In the precinct, she was known for her professionalism, rigor, and courage. Every time she was called to duty, she threw herself into the job, making sure both her own safety and that of her colleagues were prioritized. Her superiors and colleagues all praised her dedication and work ethic, especially her ability to remain calm and decisive in critical moments. Whether it was chasing down a suspect or dealing with a complex case, Lily never backed down and was always the first to lead the charge. During one particular shootout, it was Lily's instinct and experience that saved 2 young officers, and from that moment, her name became synonymous with resilience and responsibility within the department. However, behind Lily's tough exterior, there was another side to her. She was a single mother. Her 13-year-old daughter, Sophia, was everything to her. Every day, Lily would rush to the precinct early in the morning and quickly return home in the evening to spend quality time with Sophia. Despite her busy schedule, Lily never missed any of Sophia's school events and always tried to attend parent-teacher conferences, ensuring her daughter felt her love and presence as she grew up. On weekends, they would watch movies together or go for walks in the park. They even had their own tradition, a family movie night every Friday. These little moments were a testament to the unspoken bond between mother and daughter. As a single mother, Lily knew she had to work harder than most. In the male-dominated world of law enforcement, she understood that she had to prove herself constantly to earn the same respect and opportunities. She knew that any lapse in her professionalism could be used against her, so she always maintained an impeccable sense of discipline. Whether it was a routine patrol or filing reports, she executed every task to the highest standard. Her commitment to excellence was non-negotiable. Even in her everyday interactions with colleagues, Lily was always cautious and considerate. Though she was one of the few female officers, she never allowed herself to appear weak or unfit for the job. She understood that any sign of vulnerability could lead to criticism from her male colleagues. As a result, Lily earned the respect of many of the male officers. Her professional competence became the foundation upon which she built her standing in such a tough environment. Lily's life seemed perfect. She had a successful career and a harmonious family with friends and colleagues who admired her. She was the epitome of the strong, dedicated police officer and mother. It seemed as though nothing could disrupt her tranquil life. Yet it was this very woman, viewed by others as unshakable, who quietly ended her own life one fateful night. Perhaps the secret behind her apparent perfection was far more complex than anyone could have imagined. James was Lily's colleague and superior, and since his transfer to the precinct, He had quickly earned the respect of his colleagues with his exceptional work abilities and strong leadership. He was the epitome of a professional man, calm, rational, and meticulous, which made him a reliable figure. James's career was flourishing, and his marriage appeared perfect on the surface. His wife, Sarah, was a gentle and graceful homemaker, and they had a son. Their family life seemed well organized and enviable. However, over time, James's marriage was slowly falling apart. Although others saw his family as the model of success, only he knew the truth. His relationship with Sarah had become distant. His wife had grown increasingly indifferent to their home life, and their communication had dwindled to almost nothing. The love they once shared had faded into the mundane routine of everyday life. Every time James returned to the quiet, empty house, he felt a sense of loneliness that was hard to shake. He began avoiding his home, finding solace instead in his work. Lily's presence disrupted this monotony. Her strength, independence, and the kind of feminine charm that was rare in the police force captivated James. At first, James only noticed Lily occasionally during work. Her professionalism and dedication impressed him. Several collaborations on cases gave them more opportunities to interact, and slowly they started to talk more outside of work. James would occasionally compliment Lily on her work, and Lily would smile, responding with a look that conveyed something more than just politeness. One day, James could no longer hold back and confessed his feelings to Lily. They met at a quiet cafe, and James admitted that he hadn't had a real conversation with his wife in years. He felt emotionally empty and alone, and Lily's presence had rekindled a long-lost sense of warmth and attraction. At first, Lily was shocked and overwhelmed with complex emotions. She knew she couldn't easily accept such a relationship, especially since James was her superior and already had a family. But in that moment, she also realized that she, too, had emotional needs she had long ignored. She began questioning whether she was also drawn to him. After a few private talks, their relationship deepened. At first, it was just subtle glances and casual jokes, but it gradually became more intimate. James found excuses to get closer to Lily at work, and even started finding reasons to spend time with her after hours. They enjoyed the unspoken understanding between them, and the growing desire between them made the relationship more complicated. But James's inner conflict was becoming more intense. He knew he was betraying his wife, and the guilt weighed heavily on him. Every time he looked at Lily, the powerful attraction collided with his moral dilemmas, leaving him confused. He had considered confessing to Sarah, even thought about ending his marriage, but every time he looked at his wife's calm expression, he hesitated. Sarah seemed to know something was wrong, but she chose to remain silent, as if nothing mattered anymore. As their relationship grew deeper, the secret between James and Lily became harder to conceal. Every private moment they shared was a clash of souls, but also a challenge to their existing lives. Their bond was like a silent, invisible war, getting more intense, more entangling, and harder to escape. At the same time, Lily began to realize that she might not just be attracted to James's charm. She started feeling that her heart was changing, that her once firm commitment to family and work was beginning to blur under the influence of their secret relationship. What she craved was not only love and care, but also finding some warmth in a cold world. However, this warmth might be the very thing that led her to the abyss. As time passed, Lily's inner world began to change dramatically. Once confident in her professional resilience and her responsibilities as a mother, she now found her focus slipping away. She couldn't concentrate on her work as she had before, her thoughts consumed by James, the man who once made her feel warm and secure. Late at night, when she was alone in her empty apartment, her mind would flood with thoughts of him. She could no longer accept this secret, unacknowledged relationship. She yearned for more, for a future they could share. One late night, Lily couldn't hold back anymore. She picked up her phone and sent James a long, heartfelt message. Her words were filled with unease and anxiety. "We've been together for so long, why can't you make a decision? You know I can't keep living like this, in secrecy. You could choose to be with me. Why do you keep delaying?" Her fingers trembled as she typed, and every word seemed to call out to James, urging him to make a decision once and for all. But even after sending the message, Lily didn't feel any relief. She knew James's response would determine everything, the future of their relationship, the direction of their lives. Perhaps it would be a final decision, or perhaps it would be more of the same, more postponements. Minutes passed, and then her phone vibrated. Her heart raced. It was James. Her fingers nearly shook as she opened the message, staring at the short reply. "Wait a little longer. I can't decide yet." Lily's heart sank, the weight of his words causing a deep frustration and sadness to surge within her. This wasn't the first time James had given her such a response. Every time she pushed him for an answer, he always deflected it with, "Just wait a little longer." Lily felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, trying to push through the stalemate, but always getting the same answer. The delays, the empty promises, the inability to make a decision, they were like an invisible shackle, tightening around her heart. A few days later, Lily decided to write James an email. This time, she was more direct and forceful. She could no longer tolerate the hollow promises and ongoing delays. "James, I've waited too long. You keep telling me to wait, but how much longer should I wait? How many more waits will it take? I can't be the perfect cop in your eyes anymore. I'm a woman who wants to be loved and cherished. What I want is your commitment to me and our future, not more empty words." As Lily typed, tears blurred her vision. She felt overwhelmed, as if the pain and disappointment were swallowing her whole. She was no longer the calm, rational woman she once was, nor the fearless officer at work. She was just someone waiting for the man she had loved to give her a real answer. But James's responses continued to disappoint her. Each time she asked for clarity, James always reassured her in a rational tone. "You know my situation. I can't make a decision so quickly. I need more time. I don't want to hurt anyone, especially Sarah and the kids." His words were logical, even reasonable, but to Lily they only felt like excuses. She began to question whether these were genuine reasons or if James had no intention of changing anything at all. More than once, Lily wondered whether she had become too dependent on James, whether she had lost herself in this unclear and unstable relationship. She tried to distract herself, focusing on work and caring for her 13-year-old daughter Sophia, but every time the night fell, her thoughts would return to James. She felt like a lone boat adrift on a turbulent sea, ready to be swallowed by the waves that she couldn't control. Meanwhile, James's indecision and her growing discontent made their relationship more strained. Lily began to wonder about her role in this affair. She had once believed it would be a temporary solace, but now she realized she had become too entangled, unable to free herself. And James, he seemed unwilling to give her the commitment she needed. On one of their rare encounters, Lily couldn't hold back anymore. She asked him point blank, "Do you even love me?" The question came out trembling but firm, as if she needed to hear it to understand where they stood. James paused, seemingly surprised, before falling silent for a moment. Then he spoke softly. "I don't know. My feelings for you are complicated, but I can't give up my family. I need time." His words caused Lily's heart to ache even more. She knew then that James would never give her a definitive answer, and perhaps she had already begun to pull away from this unbalanced relationship. As their emotional turmoil grew, Lily's world started to fall apart. She had thought this affair would give her the love and attention she craved, but now she realized she had lost herself in the waiting. She knew this relationship couldn't continue the way it had, and that she was slowly pulling away from it. But the truth was, she wasn't sure she could let go just yet. A part of her still held onto the hope that James would finally make a decision, give her the answer she had been waiting for. But things were far from over. Deep inside, Lily's heart kept telling her that she couldn't give up. She still waited, holding on to the hope that the man she once loved would finally give her a real answer, an answer that would shape the future of her life. It was a gloomy afternoon when Lily returned home, her mood unusually heavy. She knew that the argument with James earlier that day had not been resolved. She stood at the door of the kitchen, listening to the eerie silence inside, her heart filled with unease. Sophia had not yet returned from school, leaving the house empty except for her. The air felt oppressive, as though something ominous was about to happen. She took a step into the kitchen, walked toward a chair at the table, and looked down at her phone. She took a deep breath, seemingly lost in thought, before abruptly turning and walking to the corner of the kitchen where her rarely used handgun was stored. Her fingers lightly touched the gun's handle, her gaze complicated, as if she were silently negotiating with herself. In that moment, her emotions swirled: anger, disappointment, even fear. A few minutes later, Lily's body was discovered. She was lying on the kitchen floor, blood splattered around her. Next to her, the handgun was placed on the table, aimed at her side. All the signs pointed to one possible conclusion: suicide. When the police received the report, they rushed to the scene and began searching for any clues. However, some peculiar details at the scene aroused suspicion among the officers. First, the gun did not have any bloodstains on it, and there was no blood around the muzzle. More puzzling was the angle of the gun. According to common reasoning, if Lily had intended to commit suicide, the angle of the gun should have been directly pointing at her head. But the evidence indicated that it would have been impossible for her to fire the weapon at that angle. Everything seemed to have been carefully staged to look like a suicide, yet it didn't make sense. As the police continued to investigate, Lily's 13-year-old daughter Sophia returned home. Upon opening the door, she froze at the sight before her. Her mother's body lay in the kitchen, blood spread around, and the air was thick with the stillness of death. She rushed into the house, covering her mouth to stop herself from making any noise, but she couldn't help but scream. The sound cut through the air, sharp as a knife, shattering the silence of the house. Sophia shakily dialed the emergency number. On the other end, the police heard her crying voice and immediately dispatched officers to the scene. When they arrived, Sophia was still standing frozen, tears streaming down her face. Through her sobs, she told the police that she had just come back from school and found her mother lying in the kitchen, unsure of what had happened. The police quickly cordoned off the scene and began collecting evidence. Sophia's voice faded into the background as the officers listened, but her words, "I don't know what happened," cut into the hearts of everyone present. Lily's death seemed to be more than a simple suicide. As the investigation continued, it became clear her death was not what it appeared to be. The truth behind it had only just begun to surface. In the days following the incident, the police investigation quietly unfolded. At first glance, the case seemed to be a simple suicide, but Detective John, with his many years of experience, quickly sensed that something was amiss. John was a seasoned detective in the police department, known for his calm demeanor and rational thinking. He was always quick to notice the smallest details in a case. The death of Lily, in particular, made him suspicious. He began investigating every detail of the scene, looking for any clue that could help uncover the truth. First, John thoroughly examined Lily's house, paying close attention to her communication records and her phone. The police found Lily's phone at the scene and quickly took it for analysis. By reviewing her communication records, John discovered some unusual signs. The messages and emails between Lily and James showed a noticeable shift in tone, with their relationship growing increasingly strained. In the recent exchanges, Lily had repeatedly mentioned that she knew about James's troubled marriage with his wife, Sarah, and had threatened to make their affair public. Lily warned James that if he didn't make a choice, she would expose everything. These threats of exposure added a new layer of complexity to the case. John theorized that this could have been a potential motive for Lily's death. Could James have been trying to protect his marriage and secrets, leading to Lily's murder? The investigation soon took a dramatic turn. The police checked the security footage in the area around the time of the incident, revealing a shocking detail. The footage showed James's car near Lily's house on the day of her death. The timestamp clearly indicated that James had been in the area a few hours before Lily's death, and his car had been parked nearby for a short while. Although he did not enter the house, he had been in close proximity to Lily during that critical window of time. Meanwhile, the police interviewed neighbors who lived near Lily. A neighbor named Rachel provided a key piece of information. She recalled seeing James standing in front of Lily's door that evening, as though he were hesitating whether to ring the bell. Rachel was certain of what she had seen, but had not reported it to the police at the time, thinking he had just come to see Lily for something trivial. However, Rachel's final comment sent a chill down John's spine. I saw James's expression, and it looked very tense, almost as if he was in a hurry. As the investigation into James's whereabouts continued, the police began to suspect that he and Lily had a heated argument on the day of the incident. Further searches revealed several unread messages on James's phone, one of which came from Lily and read, "If you don't make a decision soon, I'll tell her everything." This message clearly revealed the growing tension between the two and Lily's threats to go public with their affair. John's suspicions grew stronger with each passing day, and he began to think that Lily's death was not a simple suicide, but a carefully planned murder. And the prime suspect seemed to be her lover, James. All the evidence pointed in one direction, but there was still no definitive proof linking James directly to the murder. Detective John knew that the investigation ahead would be a long and difficult process. Every clue could be the key to cracking the case, but James's true motive remained elusive. As the case deepened, John realized that this was not just a simple affair-related murder, but possibly a much more complicated conspiracy. To uncover the truth, John knew he would need to take more direct actions, potentially delving deeper into James's life and conducting a more thorough investigation into his activities. At the same time, James was likely still in his own web of lies, confident that his secrets would remain hidden. However, he had no idea that the police net was quietly tightening around him. As Detective John's investigation progressed, more unexpected details began to emerge. Although initial clues pointed toward James, there was still a lack of direct evidence linking him to Lily's death. However, a new discovery brought a sudden twist to the case. This time, the evidence not only revealed the complex relationship between James and Lily, but also uncovered a long-hidden financial secret of James. By carefully examining James's bank records, the police discovered a shocking fact. A few months before the incident, James's account showed several large transfers directly related to his wife Sarah's inheritance. Several years earlier, Sarah's father passed away, and as the sole heir, Sarah unexpectedly inherited a sum of $500,000. According to James's bank records, this inheritance did not go directly into Sarah's personal account, but was transferred through various channels and ultimately ended up under James's control. This unexpected windfall was a huge financial relief for the family, which had been going through tough times. However, as the investigation deepened, the police discovered that James's marriage had become even more strained during this period, especially as Sarah was adamant about keeping all of the inherited wealth to herself. James, faced with his wife's coldness and firm stance, became increasingly anxious and conflicted. John, connecting the timeline of events, began to speculate on how this inheritance might have influenced James's decisions. If James were to divorce Sarah, he not only risked losing his marital assets, but could also be left without control of the $500,000 inheritance. Clearly, the situation had become much more complicated, and this inheritance had made James even more determined to protect his financial interests. Further investigation revealed that James's relationship with Lily had changed subtly after the inheritance news broke. Although Lily had repeatedly expressed in texts and emails that she wanted James to divorce his wife and live with her, James always came up with excuses to delay, telling Lily, "Wait, just wait. Things will get better." These evasions, however, seemed to conceal his deep fear of divorce, for if that were to happen, he would lose not only his marriage, but also the inherited fortune. This inheritance had become the focal point of his life, far more important than his relationship with Lily. John began to realize that this inheritance could be a hidden motive behind Lily's death. James may have felt that if Lily threatened to expose their affair, thus destroying his current marriage and financial situation, he would lose everything. Perhaps after the heated argument, James made a decision. To protect his wealth and marriage, Lily had to disappear. As the investigation into the case deepened, James's wife, Sarah, gradually became another potential suspect. While she initially appeared calm and composed during the investigation, as it progressed, Sarah's emotional fluctuations became increasingly apparent, and her outward calm seemed to hide emotions that were hard to conceal. Unlike her husband James, who was becoming more and more suspicious in his actions, Sarah appeared to remain calm, even when facing the media and the police. However, this calmness could not hide the growing unease and doubt within her. Especially after learning about her husband's affair with Lily, Sarah's emotions began to show signs of becoming unmanageable. She started to replay every interaction with James in her mind, and every detail became crucial. She began to question whether James's attitude toward her had changed. Through further investigation, the police discovered that Sarah, after the incident, seemed to be increasingly distrustful of her husband's behavior. She started to confide more frequently in friends and family, appearing more anxious than she ever had before. Although she did not openly express her dissatisfaction with James, she kept hinting that she felt something was wrong. She began checking James's phone and emails, searching for any signs of secrets he might still be hiding. Did Sarah have a motive? Was she secretly relieved or even satisfied by Lily's death? Her actions had become increasingly ambiguous, making it difficult to make a quick judgment. In this emotional whirlpool, Sarah was no longer just a passive victim. She could very well be a hidden participant. Her emotional fluctuations only added to the mystery of the case, making the investigation even more complicated. After weeks of detailed investigation and forensic analysis, the truth of the case began to emerge. The police confirmed that the firearm found at the scene was the weapon that killed Lily. More importantly, the forensic report revealed that James's fingerprints were found on the gun. This crucial evidence directly shifted James from the list of suspects to a prime suspect. Though he had initially appeared calm, this damning evidence began to unravel his identity. This breakthrough marked a new phase in the investigation, and James was officially named the primary suspect. As the investigation continued, more details of James and Lily's relationship came to light, especially the escalating tension between them, suggesting that their argument on the day of the incident had reached an irreconcilable point. These developments led the police to arrest James. James's reaction upon being arrested was unexpected. His previously confident and composed demeanor quickly gave way to anxiety and fear. In the interrogation room, he fidgeted nervously, clutching the armrest of the chair, beads of sweat running down his forehead. The officers repeatedly questioned him about his whereabouts on the day of the incident and the key evidence regarding his fingerprints on the gun, but James remained silent, unwilling to speak. However, as the interrogation deepened, James's emotional state began to crack. After a long silence, he suddenly looked up and muttered, I didn't mean to." The word stopped everyone in their tracks. His eyes, once filled with calm authority, were now filled with exhaustion and regret. It seemed as though he was desperately trying to piece together his actions, only to realize that he had gone too far and could never turn back. His emotional collapse was not an instantaneous outburst, but the result of accumulated pressure. The double burden of the affair and financial stress had long eroded his inner stability. He had initially believed he could juggle both his family and affair, but when Lily demanded that he choose, the emotional turmoil overwhelmed him. Ultimately, this loss of control led him to make an extreme decision. He ended Lily's life to relieve himself of the unbearable emotional burden. In the subsequent interrogation, James gradually admitted to his relationship with Lily and confessed his emotional betrayal and fear for the future. He spoke of the cold relationship he had with his wife, Sarah, and how Lily's demands for a divorce had terrified him. James's identity, once that of a respected police officer, had now completely collapsed, and he had become a cold-blooded murderer. This transformation from a good husband and father to a criminal was laid bare in that moment. As the truth continued to surface, the collapse of James's identity shocked those who had once respected him. The person they had known as a model police officer, a family man, had now been exposed as a killer. This was the moment when his carefully constructed facade finally came undone. With the case's truth slowly revealing itself, James's downfall became evident to all. His descent from a respected officer to a murder suspect forced people to reassess the man they thought they knew. The police's work was far from over, but it was already clear that even the best disguises couldn't keep the truth hidden forever. James was ultimately convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. The trial was long and heavy, filled with an atmosphere of sadness and anger. Although James repeatedly attempted to defend his actions and justify himself, there was no forgiveness for his brutal killing of Lily. When the judge announced the verdict, the entire courtroom fell silent. Once a respected officer, James had now been reduced to a ruthless criminal, and his future was forever altered. With the trial now over, the pain from Lily's death still lingered. James was sentenced to life in prison, but the fractured family could never be mended. Sophie would continue on with her life, carrying the memory of her mother and the unhealed wounds in her heart. Sarah, although beginning a new chapter, could never fully escape the haunting past. For all involved, the conclusion of the case did not bring closure, only an ongoing sense of regret and sorrow.